and it only costs $100. On Amazon, at least, it costs a little bit more. So what it does is it stabilizes the camera when you walk around, and it also keeps it from bouncing around if you move it quickly. It's not perfectly stabilized right now. I didn't balance it properly when I took it out of my backpack. So you can shoot things like this and get good video if it's not unbalanced. On top of that, the quick release is not at all a quick release, but you turn the camera around and tighten and loosen a few of these lugs. And you've got like a shoulder or a chest mounted camera, because again, the camera's too small to put on your shoulder and too small to hold still, so if you don't have a tripod, you can do this. But also, if you don't have a tripod, this is why I felt like it was quite impressive for what it cost. You fold up the handle, which is usually for storage. You open up these little legs, and you've got a tabletop tripod that also has this nice panning handle on here and a ball head. And then the whole thing, first of all, the thing weighs less than the camera. When there's weights in this handle, you can take them out. For this camera, it ends up weighing less than the camera, which is far less than a pound. And then when you want to put it away, the whole thing collapses down to just this big.
Should be still.
But can a dice carry?
And
They have any sensible on that?
and storage-wise, it's the same size as the camera and the same weight as the camera when you fold it up. So I thought it was a pretty good product. I've really only had it for like 4 days. I've been playing with it, so I can't really vouch for it in terms of overall. Like any Steadicam type device, you have to learn how to use. And I don't know how to really use it yet, but I can walk down the street and it doesn't bounce a whole lot. And I can run and it doesn't bounce very much. It does tend to pitch side to side, but luckily, I suppose, scarily, I'm trained as a physicist, so I should be able to figure that out. Angular momentum. And the only other thing that I wanted well, actually, there were 2 other things, as long as I had a little time feeded to me. I have a question for people. One of my clients is looking for a WordPress theme designer, and if anybody is one or knows one, she's looking for something that isn't going to be tremendously expensive, but for her that means, hundreds of dollars is okay, $1,000 is not okay, to develop a WordPress theme for her website that is basically a podcast. And the other thing that I wanted to do, because I am a podcast consultant, I wanted to see, has everybody had a chance who has an iPhone or an iPod Touch to play with the new firmware that allows you to get podcasts? Have you noticed all the weird things they did to change about the way podcasts work? Well, I wanted to take 45 seconds and go over those things both as a producer and as a user, because they've done some weird, confusing things. First of all, the way podcasts work on the iPhone up until now has changed once or twice already. It used to be that you work like an iPod. You hit play, you get to the end of the podcast, it stops, and it goes back to the main page, and you have to find the next podcast. Then they suddenly changed it so it was like a playlist, and it would go podcast to podcast to podcast to podcast, which I always thought was frustrating, but a lot of people wanted. They didn't leave it in on-off. They just changed it on you. Now they've kept it the continuous playlist, but they've reversed the order of the tracks, so that when you start listening to a podcast, you listen to the last one first, and then it goes to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. It's great if you are listening to podcasts and you want to listen to the oldest one first, and then go up to the first one if it's something that's a serial, new, build on each other kind of thing. But not so great if you do some things like a lot of museums and cities do, and some of the stuff I do, of making audio tours, and your audio tours are put in reverse order, so they show up 1 through 25, and now they show up 25 through 1 when you play them back. So they've done a lot of confusing things. If you haven't played with it, find somebody that has an iPhone or an iPod Touch if you're producing video or audio that's put out as a podcast on iTunes, and see how it works, because it is a little strange. But the other big thing they added is the ability to download over the air, either over Wi-Fi or over the cell phone network. And that's pretty good. It's a little weird the way it works. When it looks like your download has disappeared, that means it's done. It doesn't tell you it's done. It just suddenly stops. But the one thing to keep in mind there is if you're producing audio or video that you want people to really download on the go on an iPhone over the cellular network and not over the Wi-Fi network, it has to be less than 10 megabytes. Because if it's more than 10 megabytes, you have to use a Wi-Fi connection. So lower your bit rates, shorten your files, do whatever you need to do. If it's the kind of thing that you want somebody to be able to stand, some people are doing this now. We'll be able to do it even better. Put a sign out front, go to this URL, get a podcast, has to be less than 10 megabytes. So that's my time.
Yeah, that's true, not just